A 19-year-old stands in a dark field in southwestern Minnesota, holding a flip phone to his ear. His car is in a ditch somewhere behind him. He cannot see it anymore. On the other end of the line, his father is driving the back roads with the headlights on, asking him to flash his hazards, asking him to listen for the engine, asking him to describe anything. A silo, a sign, a light on a pole. The son says he can hear his father's car. His father cannot hear him. Then the son says 2 words. The line goes dead. He is never seen again. What happened in the 47 minutes between that ditch and that silence is the question this case has been asking for more than 15 years. Brandon Victor Swanson was 19 years old in the spring of 2008. He was finishing his first year at Minnesota West Community and Technical College in Canby, a small campus tucked into the corn and soy country near the South Dakota border. Friends described him as easygoing, a little goofy, the kind of kid who answered his phone when his parents called. He lived at home in Marshall, Minnesota, with his father Brian and his mother Annette and a younger sister. He drove a 1994 Chevrolet Lumina sedan, dark in color, with the kind of mileage you expect on a teenager's first real car. The day everything changes is Tuesday, May 13th, 2008. It is the last week of the school year. Brandon has just learned he has passed all of his classes, and that night he goes out with friends to celebrate. The gathering moves between Canby and a friend's place in Lind. He drinks. He is, by all later accounts, sober enough to drive himself home, or believes he is. Sometime after 11 p.m., he gets behind the wheel of the Lumina and starts the trip back toward Marshall on the dark grid of county roads that cuts through Leon and Lincoln counties. There are no streetlights out here. There are fields, gravel shoulders, drainage ditches, and the occasional farmhouse set far back from the road. It is the kind of country where, if you turn off your headlights, you cannot see your own hand. At 1:54 a.m. on Wednesday, May 14th, Brandon's phone rings into his parents' house in Marshall. Brian and Annette Swanson are asleep. Brandon tells them he has run his car into a ditch. He is not hurt. The car is not badly damaged, he thinks, but it is stuck. He tells them he believes he is near the town of Lind, just a few miles south of Marshall. He asks if they can come pick him up. Brian and Annette get dressed. They get in their own car. They drive toward Lind. This is where the case begins to come apart. Brian stays on the phone with Brandon as he drives. He asks his son to describe what he sees. Brandon says he can see the lights of a town in the distance. He starts walking toward them. He believes the lights are Lind. Brian and Annette drive into Lind and start sweeping the roads around it, headlights scanning every ditch. They cannot find the car. They cannot find Brandon. Brian asks his son to flash his hazard lights. Brandon says he is now too far from the car to do that. Brian asks him to listen. He honks his horn. Brandon does not hear it. Brian honks again. Nothing. Brandon keeps walking. He is moving across open farmland in the dark, in the cold, in the kind of jacket you wear to a college party, not the kind you wear to cross a county on foot. He tells his father he is crossing fields. He tells him he is climbing fences. He tells him he is walking along a gravel road. He says he can hear what sounds like a river. He says he sees the lights of a town getting closer. For 47 minutes, father and son stay on the line. 47 minutes is a long time to hold a phone to your ear. Long enough to drive from Marshall to almost anywhere in the surrounding county. Long enough to walk several miles, if you are walking with purpose. Long enough for a young man to start sounding tired and frustrated and cold. The conversation, by Brian's account later, is mostly logistical. Where are you? What do you see? Keep walking toward the lights. We are coming. And then, at approximately 2:30 a.m., Brandon says, "Oh, shit." The line goes dead. Brian calls back. The phone rings, but Brandon does not answer. He calls again and again. The phone rings out into nothing. Brian and Annette keep driving. They keep calling. The sun comes up over Lyon County, Minnesota on May 14, 2008, and Brandon Swanson is not in any of the places his parents have been searching. Here is where the case takes the turn no one in that first frantic night could have predicted. When investigators later pull Brandon's cell phone records and trace the tower that handled his last call, the signal does not come from near Lind. It comes from a tower near the town of Porter, Minnesota, roughly 25 miles northwest of where Brandon believed he was. 25 miles. He had been walking for the better part of an hour in country he had completely misidentified. The lights he was walking toward were not the lights he thought they were. The river he heard was not the river he thought it was. He was, in the most literal sense, lost on the phone with his own father, and neither of them knew it. Brandon's car is found the next day. It is in a ditch near the town of Taunton in Lincoln County on a gravel road called 240th Street. It is roughly where the cell tower data suggested. The keys are in it. There is no blood. There is no sign of a struggle. The damage is minor. Brandon is not in or near the vehicle. A massive ground search begins. Volunteers, family, friends, law enforcement, search dogs. They cover fields. They drag sloughs. They walk fence lines. The Yellow Medicine River runs through that part of the state, narrow and slow and edged with brush, and search teams work along its banks for days. The dogs follow Brandon's scent from the car for some distance. Accounts vary on exactly how far. And then the trail ends. It does not fade. It ends. Whatever happened to Brandon Swanson happened somewhere along the path he walked that night, and the ground has not given him back. He has never been found. Not a body, not a shoe, not the phone, not the jacket. There are theories. The most accepted explanation, the one most investigators lean toward, is that Brandon fell into the Yellow Medicine River or one of its tributaries in the dark. The "oh shit" is the sound of a young man stepping into water he could not see. The current carries him. The cold does the rest. It is a tidy theory, and it explains the abrupt end of the call. What it does not explain is why, after years of searching that river and the surrounding drainage, no remains have ever surfaced. Bodies in Minnesota waterways are usually recovered. This one was not. A second theory holds that Brandon fell into a farm pit, a manure lagoon, an abandoned well, or a piece of unmarked agricultural infrastructure. Southwestern Minnesota is dotted with these. A man who falls into one at night, alone, does not climb back out. This theory accounts for the silence and the absence of a body. It does not account for the search dogs, who would, in theory, have led searchers to such a site. A third theory, quieter and more uncomfortable, is foul play. That Brandon encountered someone on that gravel road. That the "oh shit" was a reaction to a person, not a hazard. There is no evidence to support this. There is also nothing that rules it out. A fourth possibility is the simplest and the cruelest, that Brandon is somewhere out there in those fields, in a place no one has thought to look, in a posture the dogs could not read, and that the land has simply kept him. What the Swanson case left behind is a question that has no clean shape. A young man was on the phone with his father. He was walking toward what he thought was home. He was wrong about where he was, wrong about the lights, wrong about the river, and somewhere in the gap between what he believed and what was actually around him in the dark, he stepped into something, water, a pit, a stranger, the night itself, and stopped existing in any way the world has been able to recover. His parents lobbied for and helped pass Brandon's law in Minnesota, which requires law enforcement to begin a missing persons investigation immediately for adults, with no waiting period. It is the only concrete thing this case produced. The rest is still open. 2 words and a dial tone. That is what we have. If you have a theory about what really happened, drop it in the comments. I read every one.